김숙입니다. 두 번째 세션 시작하겠습니다. 소개는 간단히 이제 영어로 하겠습니다. Good afternoon and welcome to the second session of so-called denuclearization cluster, which has three parts. And I give my thanks to the audience and the speakers, especially those who came from afar. My name is Kim Suk. I'm going to be your moderator for the next 90 minutes. Our issue here is, our subject is the issues and prospect for denuclearization of North Korea. It almost seems like a very stereotype title, but let's for a moment think about what happened for the last 3 or 4 months. Well, 3 months have passed since the failure of Hanoi summit meeting, and people still spar over what went wrong in Korea as well as in Washington. And in the meantime, Kim Jong-un slowly but steadily raise the level of tension by word or by physical, including some military. And you remember he set the deadline to negotiate with the United States until the end of December, and he pushed the American side to come up with a new proposal, especially regarding the sanctions relief. And after that, twice in May, he fired something like, I would neutrally say, UFO, unidentified flying machine. Well, you know, there is some political controversy surrounding how you name the nature of this missile or flying object. And I personally think it was the newly developed short-range ballistic missile. But if somebody wants to say ballistic, then it immediately runs counter to the Security Council resolution. So there is a little bit of political implication involved in here. And North Korea still want the sanctions relief. And in the meantime, FAO and WFP made their joint assessment on the food shortage situation in North Korea. Personally, I have met the Secretary General of FAO the other day, and he explained to me that he sent some of his aid workers to the field in North Korea, but I did not have elaborate explanation how the survey went on. And people are saying about there's some possibility that North Korea may go through arduous March 2.0. And also, I have heard and I have relayed the message of so-called Plan B, because they say Kim Jong-un might have begun his own strategy for Plan B. I don't know what that means, but people in Washington and in Seoul are whispering about the word Plan B, even though there are two widely different notions about Plan B. Well, having this in mind, and let me introduce the speaker on the stage. Before that, I'd like to introduce first a keynote speaker, Ambassador Lee Do-hun, Special Representative for Korean Peninsula Peace and Security Affairs of Ministry of Foreign Affairs. he's sitting over there. He doesn't want to come up here, but he's not a kind of shyness, but somehow he is sitting there. I think he has very little time. He has quite tight schedule, so he may not have time to share the two-way or three-way conversation after he's speaking. Now, on the stage, we have 5 speakers, marvelous speakers, I would say, including Ambassador Gallucci, whom I have a great admiration since early 1990s. Each presentators will have I'm sorry. Each presentation will take about 8 minutes, respectively, so that the floor will have some time for Q&A opportunity. So let me introduce from right to left. First, Ambassador Bob Gallucci, Distinguished Professor of Diplomacy at Georgetown University. And 26 years ago, I was also in Washington, and he was the chief U.S. negotiator with North Korea for Geneva Agreed Framework. And next to him, Ambassador Ning Fukui, former Deputy Special Representative for Korean Peninsula Affairs of Ministry of Foreign Affairs, China. I haven't seen him long time, and I would appreciate his appearance today here. And also Ambassador Chun Young-woo, he was Vice Foreign Minister of Korea, and he was also the Senior Presidential Secretary under President Lee Myung-bak, responsible for foreign affairs and national security. And he was chief negotiator for six-party talks, and I succeeded his position about 10 years ago. And next to him, my old friend, Mr. Joel Witt. He's well known in Korea for he's responsible for 38 North, and he's currently taking up the job of a senior fellow at Stimson Center. And next to him, Ambassador Joseph Yoon, old friend of mine also. He was a U.S. Special Representative for North Korean policy, and he's now Senior Advisor of U.S. Institute of Peace. And we can see him from time to time on CNN. We very much appreciate his courage to speak up of his opinion. Thank you very much. Without further delay, I would invite Ambassador Lee Dong-hoon for his keynote speech. Please come up.
Thank you, Ambassador Kim, for your kind introduction. Distinguished panelists, friends and colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, I'm honored to join former negotiators and experts of the North Korean nuclear issue who have paved and traversed the winding path of history. With such a distinguished panel, I hope to gain insight from their assessment of the current situation and exchange views on how to move the process forward in the weeks and months to come. On my part, having been at the helm of negotiations on the North Korean nuclear issue for the last 2 years, I would like to take this opportunity to speak about the current government's strategy, formulated based on the lessons learned from the past negotiations and the special circumstances that the Korean Peninsula is now under. Since the North Korean nuclear issue first hit the headlines in 1991, there have been 3 watershed moments in our efforts to resolve this issue. The agreed framework in 1994, the six-party process from 2003 to 2008, and the Leap Day Agreement in 2012. In essence, the agreed framework was based on a nuclear freeze for energy assistance deal between the US and North Korea. The agreement of the six-party talks pursued a step-by-step approach to denuclearization, consisting of freeze, declaration, and disablement, and dismantlement, mainly focusing on denuclearization for economic and energy assistance. The Leap Day Agreement could be seen as an attempt by the United States and North Korea, along with South Korea, to create a new momentum for dialogue after the six-party process became defunct in 2008. Yet, despite all these efforts, Korea and the international community have thus far been unsuccessful in stopping North Korea's nuclear weapons program. When the Moon Jae-in administration took office 2 years ago, the tension between the US and North Korea was at its peak, and the cloud of war loomed heavily over the Korean peninsula. From the onset, the goal of complete denuclearization and the establishment of lasting peace on the Korean peninsula was the top priority. The current government has consistently pursued a comprehensive approach to fundamentally resolve the North Korean nuclear issue, as culminated in President Moon Jae-in's Berlin Initiative of July 2017. As I took on the responsibility as the first head chief negotiator of the Moon Jae-in administration, I noticed fundamental changes that had taken place. In the first place, in the past, we were negotiating with North Korea that was still in the process of developing its nuclear capabilities. Today, we have to deal with a North Korea that claims to have, quote, completed its state nuclear force, unquote. Second, North Korea's lengthy streak of provocations resulted in an unprecedented international sanctions regime anchored on a series of UN Security Council resolutions. Lastly, the three key directly involved parties, South Korea, North Korea, and the United States, have all expressly stated utmost interest in resolving this issue at the highest level of their respective governments. Under such unique circumstances, the current government's negotiation strategy is formulated as a result of careful analysis of the new conditions and the deep retrospect of the lessons of old. Some aspects are as follows. First, the two-track approach of dialogue and pressure is a classic yet most effective approach. My government has been a model case in faithfully implementing relevant UN Security Council resolutions. We firmly maintain our position that sanctions will remain in place until we are assured that complete denuclearization has been achieved. Yet, one of the most meaningful lessons learned is that the North Korean nuclear issue cannot be resolved through sanctions and pressure alone. Any serious negotiator should not make the mistake of misunderstanding sanctions as a solution. Sanctions are merely a tool for inducing a solution through negotiations. In the end, no negotiations mean no progress. You may walk the path of sanctions, but without going through the door of dialogue, you cannot enter the room of resolving the nuclear issue. Second, we will pursue a comprehensive agreement that reflects the changed circumstances and the diversification of interests. Past agreements, such as the agreed framework or September 19th joint statement, were primarily focused on the exchange of a nuclear freeze or denuclearization for corresponding economic measures. As such, issues like normalization of relations and establishment of lasting peace through mechanisms such as peace regime were loosely linked to denuclearization, but would only be addressed in the later part of the process. But now, in a changed environment characterized by a North Korea that has advanced capabilities and faces a robust international sanctions, the demands of the North are no longer limited to energy and economic compensation, and vice versa. Therefore, the US and North Korea are called upon to put all matters of interest on the table, ranging from economic issues to security concerns, and to strike a comprehensive agreement that balances the equivalency of the entire deal. Third, we will continue to make the most of the top-down approach. Bottom-up efforts that began at the working level required a great deal of time and energy along every step of the way, without necessarily reaching concrete outcomes. These experiences have taught us that there are limitations to advancing negotiations that follow the traditional pattern of bottom-up alone. What we have now is a process that is driven forward with a strong political momentum created at the highest level of diplomacy. Former negotiators would have only dreamed of such an approach, but it was not always possible until now. We believe this top-down approach is the most suitable fit in the current situation, where the leaders have a strong political determination. It was this approach that opened the way to the historic outcome of 3 inter-Korean summits and 2 US-North Korea summits. Yet, as we have seen in Hanoi, there are limits to this approach as well. That is why the top-down approach has been and will continue to be supplemented by efforts at the working level. Fourth, the basic premise of our efforts for denuclearization is a steadfast Korea-US alliance. Looking back at the agreed framework and the 6-party talks, we could count on progress in denuclearization when there was close coordination between Korea and the United States. Recently, some have expressed concern over a fissure between Korea and the US, but let me assure you, there is no need for such a concern. Following North Korea's declaration of, quote, completing its state nuclear force, unquote, in November 2017, I worked closely with the former Special Representative Jo Yoon, who is with us today, to initiate a dialogue process through the Pyeongchang Olympics. Ever since, our 2 countries have maintained exceptional coordination throughout the entire process. For instance, after Steve Biegun's assignment as a special representative last August, we met over 20 times in the first 4 months. After some time, we just gave up counting. In this process, we held constant, in-depth discussions on not only denuclearization, but the entire spectrum of issues, encompassing peace regime, normalization of relations, confidence building, and a brighter future. Much of what we discussed was reflected in the current US strategy. Furthermore, the Korea-US Working Group was launched last November to organize and regularize the close coordination between our 2 countries. This working group now functions as an important coordination mechanism for advancing the Korean Peninsula peace process. Lastly, close cooperation with the relevant parties and the international community will continue to be a cornerstone of our North Korea policy. In the 6-party talks, the participation of China, Russia, and Japan, our neighbors and relevant parties, helped to ensure the common responsibility and implementation of agreements. These countries played the most constructive roles in this process. And when tensions on the Korean Peninsula reached its peak in late 2017, we worked closely with China, Russia, EU, and other international partners to convey messages urging dialogue to North Korea. Now may be the time to focus our efforts on the South-North US framework to create a much-needed breakthrough. But it remains unchanged that close cooperation with the former six-party countries, the European Union, and the member of the international community is necessary in successfully pursuing complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. We all know that there is lingering suspicion about North Korea's commitment to denuclearization. But we should not surrender to blind skepticism that fails to offer any viable alternatives. In the past, confirming North Korea's intention to denuclearize was quite a task in itself. Now, the leader of North Korea has proclaimed to the world in person his commitment to complete denuclearization. He has also signed written agreements with the leader of South Korea and the United States. We will be able to verify such expressed commitments in the negotiation process with intensive efforts to translate them into actual progress. There again lies the usefulness of dialogue. Fortunately, President Trump and Chairman Kim both continue to reconfirm their unwavering will to continue dialogue, Korea's role as a directly related party to Korean Peninsula issues is to keep the momentum alive and seek substantive progress. Yet despite such efforts, the dialogue process has not gained any traction since the Hanoi summit. We should realize time is on no one's side. Each party faces its own domestic political dynamics and changing international environment. This means that the window of opportunity will not or may not remain open indefinitely. In such a situation, we need to make deliberate efforts to build confidence among relevant parties to rekindle the dialogue process. The track record of past negotiations has resulted in a serious case of a trust deficit. In order to make substantive progress in denuclearization negotiations in the current phase of negotiations, dialogue, all parties need to make amicable gestures that can chip away this trust deficit accumulated over the years. It was the result of such a thinking that the joint recovery and return of remains of the U.S. service members was made one of the main pillars of the Singapore Joint Statement. Ambassador Jo Yoon knows very well how important humanitarian issues can be in building confidence. It is the same context that my government pursues humanitarian assistance to the North today. Furthermore, we must work to ensure the dialogue reaps feasible results, no matter how small, at the earliest possible stage, so that the parties involved may confirm that choosing negotiations for denuclearization and peace building was not a mistake. This is something we all need. And as we move forward, we will continue to strengthen the dialogue process among the two Koreas and the United States. Korea was not the main party to the agreed framework. There was a criticism in Korea that we were left out of the negotiations. But by the time of negotiating the Leap Day Agreement, we began to find our place as a directly involved party. We even had the expression, to get from Pyongyang to Washington, you have to go through Seoul. Nevertheless, allegations of Tongmi Bongnam, North Korea only talking to the US, leaving South Korea out, have seldom disappeared in the Korean newspapers. However, the April 27th Panmunjom summit led to the Singapore summit, and the September 19th Pyongyang summit paved the way for the Hanoi summit. It was through these series of dialogue that the South-North US-centric framework was firmly established, and we will continue to reinforce this structure. Needless to say, the negotiations of the past all came short of complete denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. But to be fair, the past attempts were reasonable and meaningful approaches given the circumstances at the time. These efforts were by no means in vain. Now, based on the lessons learned from the past and adapting to a changed environment, we seek a fundamental solution to this issue through a new path that has never been traveled before, characterized by the top-down and comprehensive approach. Considering the 10 years of stagnation since the last six-party talks were held in 2008, 3 inter-Korean summits, 2 US-North Korea summits, and 3 documents signed by the leaders in less than 2 years have been a flurry of diplomacy, rarely seen on the Korean Peninsula. I hear some people claim that these events have not produced substantive outcomes. I will argue that the summits and their outcome documents have formed a firm basis for future progress towards our common goal of complete denuclearization and a lasting peace. Before we hastily dismiss the last 2 years of hard work, I think it is only fair to give dialogue a chance. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much.
잠깐. Now that you're not going to be involved in the discussion during our session, let me ask you a quick question. It's not complex or difficult. I just want a simple answer. My question is, what is your assessment of prospect in the near future regarding the denuclearization process and inter-Korean relations and level of tension on the Korean Peninsula? I'll give you four examples of answer. 사지선다형. 1, optimistic, cautiously optimistic, cautiously pessimistic, and pessimistic. What is your answer?
Well, I'm cautiously optimistic.
Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Ambassador Lee. Now we have 5 speakers ready to be engaged, and Ambassador Gallucci, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Can you promise us that all the questions you'll ask us will be multiple choice? Because I'd like that. With this topic, it has occurred to me that one way to conceptualize the future is to think about the way ahead as presenting 3 separate paths, each leading to a different destination. The first path is uphill, and it is a long, slow incline, at the end of which we reach a peaceful and prosperous Korean peninsula, free of nuclear weapons, ballistic missiles, and other weapons of mass destruction, where the interests of nations, including China, Japan, and the United States, are captured in a regional security organizational structure. It's a nice image. The second path is level. It's actually directly in front of us, and it leads to a plateau in relations between the parties with interests in Northeast Asia, in which major conflict is always possible, but routinely managed by China acting to restrain and preserve North Korea, by the United States actively cultivating the alliance with South Korea, and the two Koreas, North and South, alternating between hostility and engagement against the backdrop of an almost mythical reunification. Not quite as pleasant a future. The third path leads downhill, and it is a slippery descent into armed conflict brought on by frustration, fear, and miscalculation, ending in major loss of life on all sides, but with no clear resolution of the issues that divide the region. I obviously favor the first path and hope that all the concerned parties are willing to make the climb. If we go that way, the first step of that journey will almost have to be the agreement of the U.S. and the DPRK to a process, and the key word here is process, to a process of sustained engagement conducted by experts and diplomats. This may occur under the umbrella of summitry, as we are now experiencing it, or, as is more traditional, capped by leaders meeting to embrace an agreement already reached at the working level. If we're on this path, then the second step, after process, will be to get both parties to agree that in the current circumstance, where there is no trust between the parties or any real confidence that the other side will honor commitments, that progress then will depend on making discrete, reciprocal, verifiable steps over a substantial period of time. Again, on this path, after process and verification, the third step is really to reach agreement on where exactly we are going together. This means gaining a common understanding of what denuclearization means and agreeing on whether the endgame will include, in addition to elimination of nuclear weapons-related capability, also ballistic missiles and chemical and biological weapons. It's a pretty tall order. The reciprocal steps would presumably involve sanctions relief and political and diplomatic steps toward normalization of relations, all leading to some international security structure for the region. In light of the recent history of meetings in Singapore and Hanoi, I would guess that the first step would just about have to address some of the major concerns of the North and the United States, and so involves significant sanctions relief offset by dismantlement and destruction of significant nuclear facilities, all under international inspection. Immediately after the failure of the Hanoi summit, the DPRK's foreign minister identified those sanctions that the North had in mind. And the U.S., for its part, has long been interested in the facilities at Yongbyon and elsewhere related to fissile material production. There will be many obstacles to success along this path, not the least of which will be agreeing on the verification measures necessary to assure compliance with the commitments by the North to dismantlement, destruction, and removal of valued assets. We, the United States and other countries, have experience with inspection regimes and their implementation in Iraq, in Iran, and elsewhere. But we also have had some past agreements with the North collapse over just these verification arrangements. Negotiating and implementing arrangements will be a major test of our ability to succeed if we pursued this path. And at the end of the day, we all need to be realistic about what can be achieved in verification, as important as verification is. Even if we get agreement on what denuclearization means, nuclear weapons take up, as it turns out, very little space. And fissile material to build those nuclear weapons take up even less space. So our confidence in achieving a true absolute zero in terms of the North's capability should be bounded by what is just physically possible to achieve, no matter what verification procedures are in place. Some of what might be on the menu of reciprocal steps we have discussed and addressed before, such as the exchange of liaison officers, a declaration on the end of the Korean War, a true treaty of peace, construction of a peace regime, whatever that exactly means for the region. Some steps will be really relatively easy, embraced by all, but some others much harder, going to fundamental security concerns. The future of the US-ROK alliance is often discussed in this context. I do not think it ought to be. The continuation of the commitments to security reflected in the alliance can continue, while their manifestation in terms of presence and operations of our forces can evolve without doing any damage to the alliance. So this path is long and, as I said, uphill. To succeed, all the principal parties will have to make the journey together. All will have to be committed to its success. This will be no easy task. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Ambassador Carlucci. And well, you made a very unique description of three separate paths: uphill, plateau, and downhill. That's quite interesting description. And I agree with you on your preference of uphill, because, well, everybody hates downhill in this path. And also in terms of plateau, there is a possibility that the plateau will easily go into the downhill side. So we all prefer, I think, the uphill path. And you mentioned about the obstacles, the serious issues of verification. And verification issue is a great obstacle to those who participated in the six-party talks. And verification was the issue that collapsed the process of six-party talks in 2008. I vividly remember. Well, in terms of downhill, uphill, it reminds me of business and cars. Denuclearization is like car. It doesn't run by itself except downhill. So we need some strenuous effort to make things to go uphill. Now, 닝 후쿠이 대사님, 중국에서 오셨습니다. 오랜만에 만나 뵈서 굉장히 반갑고, 그리고 요즘은 중국의 견해에 대해서 그렇게 들을 기회가 많지 않기 때문에 닝 후쿠이 대사님의 참석을 더욱 환영합니다. 예, 발언해 주십시오.
刚才也非常感谢这个李杜勋本部长，是吧？刚才做了一个简短，但是我觉得还是很重要的一个基调发言。那么他在基调发言里的很多的观点啊，我本人呢也是赞同的。那么下面呢我就谈一谈我个人对当前朝鲜半岛无核化那么问题的看法啊，包括对前景的这个看法。那么当前呢，这个半岛无核化进程啊，它的走向和它的这个前景啊，的确是令人这个关注的。那么去年上半年， 那么朝鲜和韩国、朝鲜和美国的领导人，那么相继应该说成功的举行了历史性的会晤，就推动那么实现半岛无核化，那么实现半岛的这个缓和半岛的紧张，以及呢构建半岛和平机制等等呢，都达成了重要的共识。我想去年这样的一个局面我想使我们很多人国际社会都受到了一个鼓舞因为半岛形势这个得到了这个紧张的局势吧得到了缓和。那么朝美领导人首次那么会晤之后刚才我说了，大家都受到了很大的鼓舞，也都希望那么在接下来的会晤当中，双方领导人能够就推动那么半岛无核化的进程，那么能够继续的保持这种对话的态势，能够使这个会晤呢能够取得更多的具体的和新的成果那么第二次朝美领导人河内那么峰会的结果，那么大家都知道了事与愿违没有能够谈拢没有发表那么大家所期待的这样的一些个新的这样的一些个共识，的确呢，我觉得是一件令人遗憾的事情。那么朝美领导人第二次会晤呢无果而终，使朝美之间来之不易的这种积极互动的势头呢，我觉着还是受到了影响其中有一点，我觉得就是朝美之间的信任被进一步的削弱了因为朝美之间是吧，这种信任本来是这个基础它本来就是很薄弱的那么第二次朝美领导人会晤的结果，我觉得应该说是进一步的削弱了这个信任也的确那么给半岛无核化的进程带来了一些新的那么不确定的因素。那么朝美领导人第二次峰会没有取得进展，我个人认为呢有3方面的原因。第一呢，就是说朝鲜和美国对抗、热战、冷战70余载，他们虽然坐到了一起，但是并不表明敌意已经消除，而且双方的这种防范、戒备的心理还是很强的特别是刚才我也讲了，彼此之间的这种信任感严重不足。那么第二点就是双方在推动半岛无核化向前走的步骤、措施等问题上呢，我觉得协调沟通还不够充分准备不足，而且干扰双方决策的外部因素也不少。那么第3点就是朝美双方在有关问题上立场差距还是比较大，那么缩小这些差距还需要时间绝不是朝美领导人会晤1、2次就能够把所有的重大的这些原则问题都能够解决的。那么特别是在双方互信严重不足的这种情况下，双方都不愿意冒巨大的风险做出重大的妥协那么双方的分歧主要就是在解决各自的优先关切顺序方面，那么分歧较大。那么朝鲜方面认为，他已经在无核化问题上已经采取了许多的措施，但是没有得到美方的回应，坚持分阶段那么同步走，先解决互信问题，再推动无核化的进程。那么美方认为呢，朝方采取的无核化举措是有限的，含金量不高朝鲜必须要采取实质性的这种无核化措施 啊。那么这些个分歧啊，缺乏互信，使双方那么对话呢，应该说变得更加复杂和艰难。那么朝美河内峰会之后啊，那么国际社会对未来半岛局势的走向和无核化这个前程啊，有一种担心和焦虑，主要是担心那么朝美是不是会重新走向对抗？那么半岛局势是不是会重新回到2017年以前的这种激烈对抗的局面？啊，那么我个人认为，啊，那么半岛这种局势今天的这种缓和局面，啊，它确实是来之不易，啊，这种局面对朝美双方都是很重要的。而且可以说，朝美双方都因此受益。尽管那么朝美双方对河内会晤的结果可能都不满意，那么未来一段时间，朝美呢可能也会相互施加一些个压力，但是我认为双方并没有把对话的大门关闭。双方之间虽然有一些个相互批评、指责的这样的一些个言语，但是我个人认为，他们这种相互的施压应该是会有底线的，是会有底线的，现在朝美双方的言论和行动都是克制的，给接下来的未来的会谈预留了空间。那么当前半岛局势和无核化的进程，这个处于一个呢非常重要、敏感的这样的一个阶段。那么在这个阶段，我认为朝美双方都要保持这个克制，共同的维护继续对话的那么这种的政治氛围，要坚持继续对话谈判，坚持通过对话来解决半岛核问题的这样的一个姿态，不要采取那么可能引起双方误判，进而导致当前半岛局势倒退的这样的一个行动。那么未来无核化进程能不能顺利的推进呢？那么我觉得可能会取决于以下几个方面。第一个就是能不能解决好信任问题，那么朝美积极增进互信，将有助于推进后续的磋商。对话商谈本身就是双方增进理解和信任的过程，所以我们也希望朝美双方能够相向而行，不断增进互信，找到这个使双方立场那么不断接近的这样的一个最大的公约数。第二个就是能否解决朝方的合理关切。半岛核问题产生的根源，半岛核问题的产生是源于这个安全问题。那么半岛无核化进程当中，应均衡地解决包括朝方在内的有关各方的合理的安全关切，并采取相应的这种积极的措施。第三个呢，就是说是否合理的设置无核化的步骤，我觉得这一点呢是非常重要的，合理的设置无核化的步骤。那么朝鲜实现半岛无核化的总的目标，它已经确定了，承诺了。那么因为朝美之间它的信任严重不足，那么无核化进程呢，客观上需要循序渐进的向前推进，所以就是说我们在这个在如何推进无核化问题上，我觉得 不能撇开这样的一个信任的问题，觉得这个信任问题可能是未来的解决的问题，可能是实现半岛无核化之后，那么朝美之间才该解决的问题，我觉得这可能是一个主次颠倒了的问题，那么增强信任，消除误解，我觉得这是在推进半岛无核化进程当中，我们不能回避的一个问题，必须要面对的一个现实的问题，一个现实问题。所以个人认为呢，就是说合理的设置若干的阶段，可能是一个比较现实可行的这样的一个办法。那么第四个呢，就是说实现无核化和和平机制进程的这个有机的衔接，各方呢要共同的努力，找到这两个进程的对接和相互促进的那么契合点，那么中方呢，其实在这个问题上呢，也都反反复复的强调过，推进半岛无核化和实现半岛永久和平机制，这是一辆车的两个轮子，只有两个轮子一起动，那么我们的半岛无核化的进程，才能够顺利的推进，所以只有说找到那么这两个进程的，推进这两个进程的这样个相互对接和促进的这样的一个结合点，我想才能使政治解决半岛问题成为一种可持续而不可逆的这样的一个进程。那么总而言之呢，这个希望我们半岛有关各方能够在当前那么困难的这种情况下，在处于一种僵持的那么这种情况下，能够坚持无核化目标不动摇，那么通过对话，那么坚持通过对话，那么政治解决半岛问题的立场不动摇，多释放善意和诚意，为推进半岛无核化进程采取更多的实际步骤。谢谢。
닝 대사님 감사합니다. 중국의 이제 시각으로서 말씀해 주는데 여러 가지 중에서 그 비핵화와 평화 체제를 연계하는 로드맵에 관해서 지금 말씀을 해주셨는데 나중에 누군가가 그 여기에 중국의 역할이 또 들어가겠습니다만은 요즘 뭐 세계 이목이 미중 간의 그 무역 전쟁 또 뭐 그 투기디데스의 함정 뭐 이런 얘기들이 많이 나와서 그 미중 간의 소위 이제 패권 헤게모니 싸움이 그 어떻게 그 지역에 있어서 북한 비핵화에 영향을 주는가 이런 거에도 우리가 관심이 많이 있습니다. 중국의 시각 고맙고 천수성님 준비되셨습니까? 예.
Well, I think one good thing that Kim Jong-un does for us is he enables academic industry to thrive and prosper on North Korea when it comes to denuclearization. So count the number of panels that we had in this Jeju forum on North Korea denuclearization. So that's an indication of how helpful he is in making this Jeju forum prosper also. The conventional wisdom is that North Korea will not denuclearize under any circumstances. And I do not subscribe to this kind of pessimism. I'm encouraged by what Lee-Dong-un's cautious optimism, because if you do not believe in, if a negotiator, a practitioner in diplomacy doesn't believe in a diplomatic solution, there is no solution. So in that regard, I violently refuse to be a pessimist. So I will try to be as optimistic as possible. So I do not agree with this conventional wisdom or truism that North Korea will not denuclearize under any circumstances. Yeah, it is true, but I believe that there is 99% 99% chance that North Korea will not denuclearize. But that's fundamentally different from 100% chance that North Korea will not denuclearize. Because if it is 100%, diplomacy has no role to play. I think North Korea will denuclearize, or only denuclearize, when its nuclear arsenal becomes a curse, which threatens North Korea's long-term survival and denies Kim Jong-un's dream. Can that happen? I think the good news is that the U.S., together with its allies and partners, possesses the ways and means to force Kim Jong-un's choice and determine North Korea's fate. So I think this is best hope. It depends on how Trump makes the best use of the leverage he has, the means and ways to achieve that goal. And if he skillfully and wisely uses the leverage at his disposal, then I think there is chance that this slim chance for denuclearization can be turned into a miracle. Another good news is that Kim Jong-un is smart enough to know that North Korea has no future without resolving the dire economic problems and delivering on his solemn promise for a better life for ordinary North Korean people. And he knows that economic development is impossible without a deal with the U.S. on the nuclear front. I think another good news is that for North Korea, the structure of cost and benefit has fundamentally changed with the completion of North Korean nuclear development as announced on December 12, 2017 in the aftermath of successful ICBM test and hydrogen bomb test. What that means is that North Korea can rebuild its nuclear arsenal very quickly, even if it gives up all its nuclear infrastructure, nuclear arsenal. So I think even if North Korea denuclearizes fully, gives up everything that the U.S. demands, they can rebuild nuclear arsenal within a matter of a year, and if they are lucky enough to get away with the cheating on in the process of verification, maybe they can rebuild in a matter of months or weeks. So the cost for rearmament has gone down to the minimum. So it's easier than ever to denuclearize for North Korea because cost of denuclearization from national security standpoint is lowest ever. And the cost of maintaining nuclear arsenal is highest. So I think the structure of cost benefit has fundamentally changed. That's one good news. With that, where are we after 2 summits between Trump and Kim Jong-un? What Trump and Kim Jong-un did in Hanoi was to present their respective opening positions. I wouldn't believe they are the final positions. So we have to keep in mind. They began with a maximalist approach, and the game they may be playing is still in the posturing and exploratory stage. It's no surprise that Kim Jong-un wants a deal on his terms and conditions as much as Trump wants on his terms. Of course, they are extremely difficult to reconcile. As it happens with the parties, between parties which cannot trust each other, both sides try to front load the most valued items held in the hands of the other side. As part of the down payment, North Korea wants sanctions relief. As part of new relations with the U.S., a peace regime. security assurance before it hands over what the U.S. values most. Likewise, U.S. wants all of these in reverse order. What North Korea wishes to demonstrate, in my view, through its latest missile launches, I think the short-range ballistic missile is the most dangerous for the ROK's security among all the missiles North Korea has tested thus far. But I think what it wants to demonstrate is that its opening position for now is not negotiable, because showing a sign of weakness or willingness to compromise is not in North Korea's negotiating dictionary. However, as Ambassador Ning Fukui said, North Korea will be very careful in crossing the line and in burning the bridge, that could break down the process of dialogue and make sanctions relief more difficult and justify the resumption of ROK-US joint military exercises or justify the revival of US military option. I think these are the last things that Kim Jong-un wants. And even though Kim Jong-un is threatening a third way, if the US doesn't come up with a more flexible position by the end of this year, I see no real third way for Kim Jong-un except coming to terms with the harsh realities of life on the ground. There has been a lot of controversy about good deal and bad deal. And how do we distinguish between a good deal and bad deal? I think this argument is actually irrelevant, doesn't make sense to me. A small deal that can be implemented immediately while facilitating successive small deals which lead expeditiously to full denuclearization is better than a big deal which takes too long to work out. And bad deal is one that allows North Korea to keep building its nuclear arsenal while making future progress toward denuclearization more difficult. North Korea's proposal in Hanoi, if accepted, would have been a disaster for the US ROK, for all those who have vital stakes in North Korea's denuclearization. Why? Because it would guarantee North Korea to increase its nuclear capabilities and make future progress for nuclear dismantlement almost impossible. It would only slow down the speed of expansion of North Korea's nuclear arsenal in return for North Korea's abandonment of its most important negotiating leverage, namely sanctions, which should be reserved for the removal of North Korea's key nuclear assets, including nuclear warheads, nuclear-capable missiles, fissile material, and stockpile. It even falls far short of even Kim Jong-un's own commitment in the New Year's address to halt additional production of nuclear weapons. What is a good enough deal? There has been also a lot of discussion about good enough deal. Well, I know that there are North Korean apologists who value Yongbyon more than half of North Korea's nuclear assets. If that's true, I think the answer is very simple and easy. Tell North Koreans to keep such a valuable Yongbyon for the time being, but promise them sanctions relief, I think total sanctions relief for all the rest, such as enrichment plants hidden outside Yongbyon, not just Yongbyon, but Yongbyon North Korea is allowed to keep all facilities outside Yongbyon, all fissile material holdings, all nuclear arsenal, all nuclear capable missiles. I think it's worth more than full sanctions relief. So if North Korea insists that this is most important and more than half of our assets, that's very good news. I think the counter proposal is also okay, keep what you value most for the time being. Give us all the rest. We will give you more than what you want. That would be a very easy solution. A small deal which effectively freezes all fissile material production in and outside Yanbian, and thus prevents any additional buildup of nuclear arsenal, can be deemed, I think, a good enough deal, depending on how much North Korea demands as a reward. But I think sanctions relief is something that we can consider if that's what North Korea is willing to do. A small deal limited to Yongbyon may be better than no deal if the price is reasonable and there is guarantee that what North Korea will do with the rest, in what procedure, what kind of mechanism will be established to map out roadmap for the full denuclearization. If Yongbyon can be bought and irreversibly disabled with limited emergency economic humanitarian assistance, I think it would warrant a serious consideration. Well, I think I have used up my time, so I have more to say, but I'll come back later if you give me more time.
Okay, thank you for your consideration. Well, we are overwhelmed by the use of a deal these days. Good deal, bad deal, small deal, big deal, and you mentioned just now a good enough deal. Out of many deals, and no deal, yes deal, whatever deal it may be, I have a little reluctance in using the term good enough deal. It personally gives me some taste of concession without consideration to strategic objectives as of now. But we will talk about that later. Now, Mr. Joel Witt, your turn.
Thanks. Thanks, Suk. It's good to be here with so many old friends, and I haven't been to Jeju in a while, so I'm very happy to be back here at this meeting. I'm going to take a little bit of a different approach here. I spent many years constructing roadmaps for agreements, and I know there is many different roadmaps for agreements as there are days in the year. So I'm not going to come at it from that approach. I want to talk a little bit about something that I've been thinking about recently. I've been spending the past 2 years working on a book about Obama, Trump, and North Korea. And so a lot of that, of course, is dealing with the history of this issue, and particularly the history of U.S.-North Korean relations, which in the United States is most people don't know anything about it. So if you look at the history of this issue, it's very interesting. And I want to start out with the meeting between President Trump and President Obama in the Oval Office during the transition, when President Obama warned Trump that during his first term in office, North Korea was going to cross a technological threshold and be able to attack the United States. And moreover, Obama, who occasionally said this in other settings, said that he could foresee circumstances in which the U.S. might need to use military force against North Korea to deal with this problem. Now, I'm not going to get into any deep psychoanalysis of President Trump. That would probably take more than the 8 minutes I have here. But the point here is, I think President Trump came out of there stunned, and one of the questions he asked is, why hasn't this problem been dealt with before? Why am I now called upon to do something about this? And I think that's a valid question, and that gets me to the main point I want to make, which is, in the 25 years of the U.S. dealing with North Korea, there have been at least two critical historical hinge points where our actions determined what happened in the future in good and bad ways. And so the issue for me is, are we in another historical hinge point at this moment in time? So first, what are the historical hinge points? Bob and myself and Gary Seymour were involved in the first one, the 1994, and Suk, I'm sorry, in the 1994 agreement. That was a significant hinge point. If you think back to that time period, it wasn't preordained that there would be an agreement. The spring of 1994, it looked like we were heading to a second Korean War. Events developed, particularly Jimmy Carter's visit to the North, that allowed us to turn the corner, and we ended up with an agreement in the fall that essentially not only froze North Korea's program, but it was a denuclearization deal. The events could have played out differently. We could have had a second Korean War, God forbid. A nuclear North Korea could have emerged, and that would have presented us with a big challenge. North Korea could have collapsed during the 1990s. While it had nuclear weapons, that would have been an even bigger challenge. But the point is, because we had that agreement, North Korea's program was stopped dead in its tracks. And what most people don't understand is that our intelligence estimates were telling us that by the early part of the next decade, North Korea could have had as many as 100 nuclear weapons. As far as we know, they don't even have 100 today. So that agreement, I think, was a big win for us. Now, of course, everyone will say, well, they were cheating, and they were cheating. They started to cheat during the 1990s, and the Clinton administration knew that, and it had a plan for dealing with it. So this brings us to the second hinge point, which is 2002, and the collapse of the agreed framework. They were clearly cheating, and the Bush administration took an approach of confronting North Korea, which backfired. And the agreement collapsed, and the Bush administration was not prepared to deal with the collapse. And so I have friends who would argue, and I tend to agree, that that started North Korea down the path to where it is today in terms of restarting its nuclear program and moving down that road. So that's the second hinge point, a very significant development. Today, is this a third hinge point? And I think it is. First, I think you have a North Korean leader who's looking for a very different approach to the future, now that we've had a few years of missile tests and nuclear tests. He's looking towards turning the corner and modernizing his economy. I think that's abundantly clear from everything he has said and done. Secondly, you have an American president who's willing to take a risk, to make these bold moves towards symmetry. That's not an approach previous American presidents have been willing to take. And of course, the Trump administration has been it's been chaotic, it's been inept in moving forward, but nevertheless, I think this has been a big plus. And third, of course, here in South Korea, you have a president who's 100% on board with this particular approach. So I would argue we are in a hinge point now, and we need to recognize that rather than being focused on all the tactical issues that people are focused on in the moment. And most of you don't follow the American media, but we've completely lost sight of the dangers here and completely forgotten about the whole Fire and Fury year-long episode. So what do we need to do? I have one suggestion. I'm not going to lay out a roadmap for everyone. The one suggestion I have, which was I recently published with a friend in an article in an American publication called The National Interest, is that President Trump should keep playing the summit card. And so the next logical step there is for President Trump to tell Kim Jong-un that he's willing to visit Pyongyang for a third summit as soon as possible. And secondly, as part of that offer, in order to avoid any misunderstandings or the problems that happened in Hanoi, people below the leaders need to work out the basics of the next deal. That, I think, is essential. One last point, which isn't in my prepared remarks. I agree that this window can close. And there are people who think that it's okay. The window closes. We can live with that. Well, yes, we can live with it. We have to protect ourselves. We have to take all the necessary measures. But what I would say is if we look a few years down the road, administrations change in the United States and in South Korea. Approaches will change. At that point, I guess I sort of disagree with my colleagues. You will have a North Korea that may not flagrantly be developing new types of missiles and new types of nuclear weapons, but it will be churning out more and more weapons, missiles, and the nuclear weapons. And I don't think any government, whether it's your government or our government, can turn a blind eye to that, particularly if there isn't an active process of diplomacy going on. So it's quite possible that the closing of this window will put us once again in a very difficult spot. So why don't I'll stop my remarks here.
Thank you, Joel. And I especially appreciate your views on the historical perspective that you look this moment as the third critically historical hinge point. Our last speaker, Ambassador Joseph Yoon, you have, well, if you spend 8 minutes, we have only 1 minute left for the floor, but you can speak, and if it's okay to you, you can speak the first 2 minutes in Korean and demonstrate the audience how fluent you are speaking Korean.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Kim. It's good to be here. That does remind me when I first met, actually about second or third time, Ambassador Kim was the Director General, and he said at that time my Korean was good, but I had to improve 존댓말, you know? And so I took that hard. Actually, I won't take long, but I wanted to expand. I thought some of the very key points were made by Ambassador Ning Fuk-hye, and I wanted to kind of follow up on his remarks on this gap between U.S. position and North Korean position. And so, number one, what is it that North Koreans want? Number two, what is it that Americans want? And number three, how can that gap be narrowed? I think the clearest explanation of North Korean position was a year ago in Singapore when President Trump and Kim Jong-un met. And they really agreed on 3 items in priority order. Number one, to build a new relations between North Korea and the United States. Number two, to move to a peace regime discussion. And that comes to what Kim Suk said earlier. And number three, only then can they consider steps towards denuclearization of the Korean Peninsula. And so for them, the first steps are very important. And this point, I heard over and over again whenever I met with North Koreans. That is the U.S. must remove your hostile policy. And I've asked them many times, what do you mean by hostile policy? What is it that you want removed? And they could never pinpoint to what it is exactly, but what is clear is that U.S. must make sure that the North Korean regime is secure, that there has to be the confidence, the security they could accept. And to me, that is the clearest North Korean position yet. And for them, this is not that they cannot be bought off by humanitarian assistance, by economic assistance. So for them, I believe it is what I would call security for security deal. That's what they want. That is the North Korean position. American position is actually security for economic benefit deal. And so U.S. has always been insistent, you denuclearize first and we will do everything for you. We will normalize relations, we will lift sanctions. Why? We will build condos in Wonsan, you know? And so that's been the American position, security for economic benefit. And this is a big gap. They're looking for regime survival, but we're saying, give up your deterrence and we will meet your economic needs. So what is it that we can do to meet those two very different perspectives? And this is not easy. And this is why I'm very much with Ambassador Chan in thinking 99% is not possible, maybe 1% it is possible. It's rather like me going to church without knowing is there hell or heaven afterwards, you know? So you have to have faith, I believe. Faith is very important. Well, there are two groups of measures that I believe you can introduce to narrow the gap. One is the military measure. And of course, you know, the starting point for that is always end the joint exercise. We've done that. Their next point will be to remove strategic assets, assets such as you know, nuclear-capable fighter planes, nuclear-capable submarines, and so on. And then the third item on that military measure is there has to be some discussion on future of UNC, UN Command, as well as CFC. I think that all belongs to that basket. Second thing is the diplomatic basket. Obviously, you need diplomatic normalization, and there has to be, even before that, end of sanctions, and then obviously some kind of non-interference item. Now, I mean, like Ambassador Chan, is that enough then? I sometimes doubt it, because I do believe fundamentally they are not worried about national security as much as regime security, and how to give security assurance for the regime remains very, very important. But I do also believe at the same time, without taking into account their security for security type of deal, we're not going to make that much progress. So ultimately, we have to open up the discussion on things like normalization, on things like peace regime. Otherwise, it's going to be futile. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you. For the time being, a peace regime was not mentioned because of the North Korean preference for lifting sanctions, but we have to come back to this peace regime issues, as Joseph said and Ambassador Ning Fukui mentioned earlier. We have exhausted 5 speakers, and we have only 2 minutes left, but I have to encroach some time into break time to and open up for a couple of questions. Please raise your hand. Yeah. Would you identify for yourself first?
Hi, my name is Jiwon Lee. I'm a reporter from Arirang TV. Ambassador Yoon, you just said that what North Korea wants is a security-to-security deal. That's what they eventually want, and that's what everyone thinks. But if to give that, it's not really easy for the U.S. because that would mean taking out the U.S. troops in the south and actually the nuclear umbrella on the Korean Peninsula. It would actually, it's not something that the U.S. is really looking forward to. And I'm not sure if security-to-security deal is what really North Korea wants instead of sanctions. If that gap can really be closed. It's as if North Korea and the U.S. is looking at a different result at the end of the whole denuclearization process.
I agree with you. It's going to be a long process, and security for security deal, I do believe you're going to have to discuss these items, and which is why what we have all talked about, process is very, very important. And without dealing with their fundamental issues, I don't think they're going to give up nuclear weapons.
And is that something the U.S. would be willing to take?
I think we need to be able to discuss it, resolve it to their satisfaction as well as ours. And that's what negotiations are about.
Thank you. Next and last question. Yes, go ahead.
Thank you. My name is Sebastian Berger. I'm with the international news agency AFP. Many of the panelists have talked about there being a long process. At the same time, Professor Witt, you said that the window is closing. How long is there for the process to carry on?
I often joke my crystal ball busted on this issue a long time ago. So I can't predict that for you. What I can say is you can prolong the closing of the window by starting to move forward. And you may need to move forward with deals that, people are going to say, well, gee, that's not the best deal you could have gotten. But we need to start getting traction. So, for example, it's my understanding in Hanoi that a lot of progress was made on issues other than the nuclear issues. So there's the basis, at least, for moving forward if we can start making steps forward on the nuclear issue. And I guess here's where I disagree with my friend, Ambassador Chun. I think that we need to get traction soon, because if we don't, then the window's going to start closing. And despite all the sanctions and, everything that's been done to put pressure on North Korea, I don't think that's going to make them all of a sudden throw up their hands and say, gee, we got to get a deal. I think they will start moving in other directions.
Well, thank you. Chun, would you like to take 90 seconds to respond?
Well, I don't want to respond to Joel Witt's remarks because I don't think we can reconcile our differences there. But I would like to comment on the previous question from the floor about security, economic benefits. Yeah, I agree with Ambassador Joseph Yoon that this is about security for security. And for North Korea, security is more important than economic benefits. But economic benefits are also very important. But what they don't want is to talk about economic benefits. They don't want to look like selling out their most treasured assets for trivial economic benefits. Yeah. Economic benefits are actually very important for them, but they would hate to be looking like, selling out nuclear arsenal for economic benefits. So it's wise for President Trump not to talk about bright economic future for North Korea. He should rather talk about the security that North Korea will enjoy as a result of denuclearization, instead of emphasizing, the Trump Towers rising up in Pyongyang or elsewhere. In Western, language that would sound great, but North Korea wouldn't be very enthusiastic about such a thing, even though within their hearts that's what they want. So it's important not to talk about economic benefits.
Thank you. Your voice sounds like very masculine, and this concludes our sessions of 90 minutes, and I thank everybody for their participation. Thank you very much.